Hi guys, this is Jess with This Tiny Schoolhouse. Today I am filming upstairs in our bedroom, so please excuse the mess. We've got the crib back there, some laundry. That's actually not laundry, that's clothes that need to be donated, and just a mess behind me. But it's the quietest room in the house right now, so this is where I'm filming. It's also 1,000 degrees in Ohio right now, so I'm going to keep the air conditioning on, so you guys might be able to hear a little bit of background noise, but I would be drenched in sweat by the time this video is over if I didn't have the background noise, or the air conditioning on with the background noise. So it is what it is at this point. But besides all that, I just wanted to say welcome to my channel. Like I said, I am Jess with This Tiny Schoolhouse. I am a homeschooling mama of 2 little kiddos. One is a 3rd grader, she's my oldest. And then my youngest is a pre-K 3, so we're not actually doing any real school with him yet because he's only 3 years old, and I've learned very quickly that it goes by way too fast to start school that early for us. But I just wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about homeschooling for some of the mamas out there or daddies out there that might be in the situation of homeschooling this year. Maybe it's not something they've always wanted to do. Maybe it's not something that they were super passionate about or developed passion about like I did. Maybe they are forced into it this year with everything that's going on in this crazy, crazy world. So if that's you, if you're a new homeschooling mama or a papa or grandma or grandpa, this video is 10 tips for new homeschooling parents. Maybe you've always wanted to homeschool and this is just your first opportunity to really give it a chance because you've maybe thought that public schooling was a better fit for you. I don't know your circumstance, but I hope that these 10 tips will help you. I'm going to talk a little bit about my homeschooling journey myself first. I was never ever going to homeschool. I thought homeschoolers and homeschooled kids were weirdos. I was obviously in public school myself as a child. I loved school. I always had so much fun with it. I specifically remember most summers when I was little, we would go to Borders and get the teacher books for the next year for me. So if I was going into 3rd grade, I would go and get the teacher's book for 3rd graders and do practice work for the upcoming school year. So to say that I've always loved school is an understatement. School really kind of changed for me. It became all about the social. I got straight A's in school. I was always on the far end of the academics. I wasn't like necessarily the best or anything like that, but school was very easy for me, so I always got good grades. So because of that, I was always bored in school, and slowly but surely my fire and passion for learning died, and I did not want that to happen for Emma. So at first I thought that meant being very rigorous with her work schedule and getting her prepared for kindergarten, and then something happened right before she was supposed to go into kindergarten, and I don't even really know what happened when we made the decision. I just remember talking to my husband, like, should we maybe homeschool her? And him being like, I don't care, which I know is not most people's situations. And so we homeschooled her, and we're like, we'll just give it kindergarten. My plan was originally to give it kindergarten, and then I did kindergarten with her when she was 5. And then I thought, oh, well, if all else fails, I can stick her in kindergarten as a late for 6, because you don't have to be in kindergarten until you're 6, but you can when you're 5 in Ohio. So my plan was, if we hated it, I would do kindergarten with her and then enroll her in kindergarten or 1st grade if she was that far along. And ever since then, we've loved homeschooling. My perspective on homeschooling even has changed so much. Obviously, I still think we're all weirdos. We're great weirdos. It's good to be a weirdo. For me, I am planning on homeschooling long term. I'm going to homeschool my initial idea after that was to homeschool per year. So like if maybe in like 5th grade she decided she wanted to go to public school, then I would send her. Right now, obviously I would not. I am very pro homeschool right now, and I do not plan on ever doing virtual learning with her through a school. Not that there's anything wrong with that, it is just wrong for our family. I think one of the most important things that doesn't count as one of my tips today is that everybody is just doing the best that they can with what's going on in the world. Everything is different. It's different for parents. It's different for kids. This is uncharted territory. It's important to realize, give everybody grace and realize that everybody is just doing the best that they can. I am super fortunate and very lucky that we already were homeschooling when this started. We were put in place. I stay at home. I don't know if you guys have been watching my channel for a while, you know that my whole family actually lives with my parents. So my husband, myself, and my 2 children, we actually live in my parents' house because they have a huge, gorgeous house. And we initially moved in so we could save money to move out, and we were planning on moving out very quickly. But now we've decided that we would really rather just stay so I can stay home still and slowly save to move out rather than try to do it as quickly as possible and put that financial burden on ourselves. So we're still living here so that I can stay at home with the kiddos and homeschool. So that's a little bit about me, and way too much information and way too long of an intro. So let's just get into those top 10 tips for homeschool parents. So the first thing that I really want to say, and it's really important, and that is that homeschooling is not pandemic schooling. I know a lot of people feel like they got a taste of homeschooling at the end of last year with virtual learning. Everybody was doing virtual learning at home, at least in Ohio where I'm at. So everybody kind of got a taste of school at home. But that is not the same thing as homeschooling. In fact, homeschooling right now is not even the same thing as homeschooling. Having someone else plan out lessons, plan out material, plan out work that your child should be doing, giving it to you, and then you supervising it, in my opinion, is not homeschool. Homeschool is so much better than that, is so much less stressful than that, not on anybody's deadline but your child's. I think it's really important to say that homeschooling will be so much different than that. And like I said, homeschooling during a pandemic is not even homeschooling. We were out far more often than we were home for homeschooling. We were out doing co-ops and field trips and play dates and park dates and nature and all kinds of things. We were very rarely home in our homeschool, which obviously changed for us as well. Our social aspect has been ripped away from us as a homeschooler. It's still not the same thing as having a teacher, a stressed out teacher who is a saint for completely changing their curriculum and the way that they've done things and learning how to do things online. For them to do online programming for hundreds of kids or dozens of kids is so much different than you being able to fine-tune your child's homeschool. All of that to say, homeschooling is so much better than pandemic schooling. Now maybe with some time to plan and prep, the teachers kind of got things a little more organized and a little more easier and approachable for the upcoming school year. For those of you who are planning on doing virtual schooling still or required to do virtual schooling still, our state is giving you an option, or our district, so the kids can go in person or they can do virtual school, or they can homeschool as usual. But to second that, homeschool is also not public school at home, unless that's what works for you. It does not have to be wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning, do school all day until 2, have a half an hour for lunch. Unless that works for your family, it does not have to be that. And I don't know very many people that it actually would work for. For us, we probably do 2, maybe 1 to 3 to 4 hours of actual sit-down work a day. 4 hours is stretching it, like hard. She is sitting there doing like one math problem every 20 minutes, kind of stretching it. We probably average about 2 hours a day with all of the things that we do for sit-down book work. That's not to say that that's all the school we do all day, but for sitting down, writing something out or looking something up or reading something or doing math problems, it's on average about 2 hours a day. She's in 2nd grade last year, so she'll be doing a little bit more this year as 3rd grade approaches. I think for people transitioning from public school to homeschool for the coronavirus or the situation that's going on in the world, it will be a lot more difficult for you to really, not to understand, but break out of the public school like setting that you're in and realize that homeschooling can actually be so much more. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm not offending anyone. There's absolutely nothing wrong with public school, and there's nothing wrong with virtual school. I'm just going to put that as a disclaimer now, so I don't have to keep saying it. Homeschooling can be so much different, and it can be catered to your child, which is great. My second tip is to test out a lot of different curriculums. One of my favorite, we're Christians, so I'm okay with Christian curriculum. We don't homeschool for religious purposes. We are okay with religion being in our schoolwork. So one of my favorite websites is christianbook.com because it gives you a lot of pages in the sample before you buy it. Amazon only gives you 1 or 2, and the actual programs might give you more samples if you go to their website as well. Sample out as much curriculum as you possibly can, because there are so many different options out there, so many different things and tastes for your child. It's also important to remember, and this kind of goes into tip number 3, kind of between tip number 2 and number 3, is to not only find your teaching style, but to also find your kiddo's learning style. If you have never taken any kind of child psychology course, you may have not heard that a child has several different learning styles, or even a person has several different learning styles. There's kinesthetic, which is like hands-on, visual, which is someone who actually needs to see it to learn it, auditory, which is someone who needs to hear it to learn it. There's a couple other ones, but those are the main ones, the ones who need to hear it, see it, or do something with it to learn it. So figure out kind of which one of those works best for your child, and then figure out what your favorite teaching style is. I'm going to go over some of the popular homeschooling philosophies at the end of the video, so you guys can kind of see those there. It's really important to figure out how you like to teach and how your kiddo is receptive to what you're teaching. So that is huge. And it took us a couple years to really figure it out, find a balance between both of those things, and that is okay. So that leads me into tip number 4. It's okay to drop every single thing that you're doing and switch up and do something else. The amount of times that I have switched curriculums in the middle of the year I can't even count how many times I've done that, because it just wasn't working for us, and then we would switch back when it worked for us better. It's completely okay to switch things up and do things differently and do things better. I always use the phrase know better, do better, and if you know that something's not working for you, then change it up and do something different. It's not only going to be refreshing for you, but it'll be refreshing for your kiddo. That to say also, you don't have to finish a curriculum. If you get something and your kid hates it and they're crying every day, or they're not comfortable with it, then get rid of it. Sell it online. It'll work for somebody else, or just pitch it, sell it in a yard sale. Do whatever you want to do with it. Make a craft out of it. I don't care, but you don't have to keep doing it just because you purchased it. Don't get me wrong, don't be throwing out $500 curriculums after you've used it for a day. You can resell those. It's okay to stop using them. Just because you spent money on it doesn't mean you have to keep using it. Try to find some free curriculum or supplements. There's something, it's a homeschool kind of term and like an education kind of term where you use something as a spine. So it's like the backbone of your homeschool, but it's not the only thing that you do. So there's like history curriculums where you'll use it as like a guide, but it doesn't have to be the only thing you use or the only thing you do in your school. So if you're learning about anatomy, you can do projects on anatomy, you can read other books about it, you can spend 3 months on one worksheet of anatomy if you want to. My 5th tip is that if learning isn't a little fun, your kid's not going to like it. And it's okay to make things fun. It doesn't have to be boring sit-down work. Your kid doesn't have to be miserable at a desk to be learning. In fact, I think that being miserable hinders their education more than anything else. So you can change things up. We have 3 math curriculums because Emma hates math. She used to love it so much, but once it started getting more difficult, she was not a fan of it anymore. So we switched things up so that we can constantly be changing things, stimulating different parts of her brain and making it more interesting for her. So we, like I said, we use 3 different math curriculums. We use Masterbooks, Abeka, and Singapore. Singapore is our spine. It's what we use to learn new things. And then we use Abeka and Masterbook as practice and reviews, but it's just a different stimulus every time we do something different with it. And we also do board games for it because, again, it's just a different connection in her brain and it makes it more fun for her. So she's not constantly hating math. It's nice to be able to have her be like, oh, let's do this part of math, instead of constantly not wanting to do something. And it makes it lighter on her and lighter on the kids to enjoy it. Tip number 6 for me is to find your tribe. Now this has nothing to do with your kids' social, it's to find your tribe. It is so important as a homeschool parent to have like-minded people around you, people that support you. Homeschooling is hard, y'all. Doing it by yourself would be impossible. For me, I have several friends who homeschool, which is really great. One of my best friends of all time homeschools, and our kids are really good friends and they get along, and it makes it so nice to have somebody who actually understands. I have other best friends who I consider family, but they don't homeschool, so they don't understand that aspect of your life, and it makes it difficult. People care about you, but they can't relate. So it's nice to have people you can relate to. Right now, it's probably more difficult than most times to find an in-person tribe, but there are places, even Facebook groups, that are centered around homeschooling and homeschooling parents and homeschooling families can act as a tribe for you, for something for you to bounce questions off of or ideas. One of my absolute favorites, and it's probably the biggest Facebook community I'm actually a part of, is Hip Homeschool Moms. It is a huge group. I think there's like 40,000 plus homeschooling families in there. You can just go on there and ask questions. It doesn't have to be homeschool related. It can be any kind of relation or any kind of question, any kind of thing. In fact, in that group, I think it's actually more un-homeschool related than homeschool related. There are also homeschooling groups per grade level or per style. Say you're a Charlotte Mason homeschooler, there are Charlotte Mason Facebook groups out there where you can go on and ask questions or bounce ideas off of. So it's very important to find your tribe. It can even just be your partner or your mother, your father, but it's still nice to have people in the exact same situation as you to talk to. Tip number 7. This goes for all the time, but specifically in this new COVID situation that we are all finding ourselves in. One of the biggest phrases in homeschooling, one of the biggest questions people get is, how are you going to socialize your kids? And I know a lot of homeschoolers that like to reply, you socialize your dogs, you don't socialize your kids. Kids socialize themselves. Kids make friends. Kids can go around another child and make a friend with them, and they don't have to be the same age. They don't have to be the same grade. They don't have to even like most of the same things. They can have one thing in common with another kid, and boom, they're playing. Teenagers, get them involved in video game groups or things like that. You don't have to socialize your kids. They do that on their own just by being presented opportunities to interact with other kids. I'm pretty sure my 6th grade teacher told me at least 100 times, school is for learning, not for socialization. Some opportunities where you can get your kids around other kids so that they can make friends, because just like for you, it's important to have friends. You can join co-ops. If you don't want to join a co-op, start a co-op. I am seeing right now in my community so many groups forming around homeschooling, and I love it. For example, I actually have started a co-op, and that's how my kid has, we met a lot of the families that we socialize with today and hang out with today. We also have a Girl Scout troop that I'm a leader of, so she hangs out with kids that way. We used to do a lot of stuff at the library, so she would be around other kids that way. I know a lot of libraries are closed or not doing things in person right now, so that's not technically an option, but it does exist. There are online groups, like I've said, where you can just do field trips together. I have a Facebook group that I am a part of that literally just puts up things like that. Like, hey, we're going to do Pokemon Club at the library on this day if anybody wants to come. Hey, we're going to go to the zoo if anybody wants to come. And you can do that kind of thing. It's a lot more dangerous right now with COVID. I completely understand. Even just virtual things, or just giving yourself grace. They don't have to socialize with other kids. Homeschoolers are more socialized than public schoolers, in my opinion, because they are not sat down with just kids their own age. So, for example, pre-COVID, we would go to the library, and she would see kids of all ages. She would see 3-year-olds and play with them. She would see 10-year-olds and play with them. And then she would converse with the library staff. She would go with me grocery shopping, so she would be getting socialization that way. She would see how adults act in these adult situations and learn how to do these things. Whereas kids in public school are sitting in a desk with kids all their own age, all their same average skill level, and then that's it. They get that other stuff outside of school. Obviously, they go places with their parents, they play sports, that kind of thing, but it's not the same as getting it all the time. Again, there's nothing wrong with either. So I don't want anybody to come at me being like, you talk bad about public school. I was public schooled, so I like it too. For us, homeschooling works better. Number 8, I kind of touched on this already, but it's still really important to learn. Homeschooling does not have to take all day, because living is learning. You can sit down and do an hour worth of book work. You can sit down and do no book work, and your child can learn just by being a kid. There are so many ways to learn through play, so many ways to just learn through life, and that's what's important. Your employer doesn't come and sit down and ask, at what age did you learn to read, and can you multiply fractions by grade 2? Nobody cares about that. You learn life practically. Yes, it's for us, we do curriculum because it's important for me to have those boxes checked. But there are plenty of schoolers out there who are able to check those boxes without opening a single workbook. They do it through reading and just life. And that's great. You can learn to multiply fractions by baking. Life is learning, and that to me is one of my favorite things about homeschool. It gives you the opportunity to teach your child and yourself to slow down and learn together. Number 9 is probably one of the most important tips for new homeschoolers, and that is that you do not need a homeschool room, you don't need fancy curriculum, you don't need a bunch of school supplies, you don't need posters on the wall to homeschool. You can homeschool with absolutely nothing. Nada, with zip. You can homeschool with absolute zilch if you have to. A library card is my ultimate resource to homeschooling, but you don't need to have a $600 curriculum or a beautiful Pinterest-worthy homeschool room. And I think it's really important to point out, because a lot of people out there are probably thinking that you have to have those things, because when you get on Pinterest, that's what you see. And while it's great to be able to do that, probably 80% of homeschoolers do not have that and still raise successful, happy, well-learned children. So it's very important to realize that you don't need those things. If you can get them and you can provide them, then great. But don't beat yourself up if you can't. Okay, tip number 10 is that if you are not having fun, odds are your kid isn't either. And your kid really needs to be able to have fun to learn. This is a wonderful and rare opportunity for you to allow your child and yourself to adapt to a slower paced life. You don't have to be rushed from classroom to classroom. You don't have to be rushed to get out of bed in the morning unless that works for you. It can be a time where your child realizes that they can come to you with questions or struggles. They're having trouble in part of their school, they realize that they can come to you. Or you can be a homeschool zombie and hate it and be miserable, and your kid will see that and they'll feel reluctance at coming to you, and while they'll still know that you love them with your whole heart, they will realize that they can't come to you with any problem, or you don't have the patience to teach them. And while not everybody does have the patience to homeschool, don't let them see that. Have fun with it while you can. Especially if you are just doing this for the coronavirus, this will pass, this will end, and your kid will go back to school, and nobody's going to care if they're behind. Everybody in public school is going to be going back when this gets back to some kind of normal. We'll be going back at different levels and different advancements. So instead of focusing on your kid has to hit these academic check marks, focus on your kid has to hit these check marks of life. They realize that my parents are my safety. My parents are knowledgeable and real, and if you don't know something, they'll go find it. They love me. They love being with me. They view this as an opportunity to be with me, rather than I am a hindrance at my house. You do not want to make your child feel like they are a hindrance being home. They are interrupting your social life. They're interrupting your typical day. Don't make your child feel like a burden. And I have seen parents do this during pandemic schooling. So, and it just breaks my heart. It breaks my mama heart to see parents act that way toward their children when this is scary for them. This is brand new for them, and you think that you're scared. Imagine how your child feels. Have fun with it, no matter what you guys are doing, even if you have to throw all the books aside and say, we're not doing this. This isn't how we're doing it. We're gonna just have fun together and read together and learn together. That's okay. That's great. It's better than okay. So that's my last tip, is to have fun with it and enjoy this time with your kids that you may not have had. And you only get so long with them. And It breaks my heart to think about it. I saw a quote the other day that said, look at it as if you had 1 year left with your child. 1 year left. What would you do? What would you do with your kids if you only had 1 year left? And do that. If you had 1 year left, would you be screaming at them because they can't get their math homework done? No. You would be doing fun things and trying to explore new things and give them experiences to be people off of. So yeah, do that thing. So apart from all of that, I wanted to kind of give you guys some words, some catchphrases that might be worth Googling for you, some kind of jumping off places about different homeschool philosophies. The first is my favorite, and that is Charlotte Mason. Charlotte Mason believed in an education style that focuses mostly on literature and habit building. Now, these definitions are basic, like so basic, but it's just kind of something for you to grasp. If you guys want, I can go into more in-depth theories and practices of homeschool styles. If that's videos that you guys maybe you want a whole video on Charlotte Mason and some of her ideologies, I can do that, or any of these. But this is just the most basic, just to give you kind of search terms to go and further your homeschool education. The next style, and this is the style that I identify with most, is eclectic. Eclectic, obviously, I think it's probably the style of most homeschoolers, and that is a little bit of everything. Maybe they're merging two styles to fit together into their perfect homeschool-esque life, and that's kind of us. We're very eclectic. I pull my favorite things out of a lot of these different learning styles and put them together to see what works for us. Another is that I really love, I did my favorites first, is unschooling. Now, unschooling is exactly what it sounds. It is not it is the opposite of traditional school. These are people who like to live through life, or learn through life, and let everyday experiences be their guide. Now, again, that's so basic that it's almost insulting, but that's kind of very free homeschooling is unschooling. For classical homeschooling, it is when academics are very important and they are introduced to the learner as it is planned out by the educator, and it's scheduled, and it's very similar to what you would find in a public school setting. Then there is Waldorf. Now, Waldorf is the one that I know the least about, but I believe it is teaching your child through creativity. So if you have a very kinesthetic learner, Waldorf and might be one for you. It's very nature-based. Charlotte Mason is as well, which is awesome. I love it, but you know. Then there is the unit study homeschoolers. Unit studies are a lot of fun. We use unit studies in our homeschool, and that's when you take one subject and you make it work for all of your subjects, or at least like one of your subjects. So you'll take, say, oceans is a huge unit study theme. You would find books about oceans and you'd read oceans together, and you would count octopus legs, that kind of thing. It's just all in one theme. There are interactive notebooks that go along with unit studies a lot. Those are some of my favorite things. Then there are also different homeschool, smaller divisions of homeschool. Classical Conversations is one that actually has its own co-op in it, and they give you your own curriculum. If you are interested in Charlotte Mason, you can look at AmblesideOnline.com. They have an entire breakdown of Charlotte Mason and even a curriculum, free curriculum for you. Some other free resources, The Good and the Beautiful is one. Reading levels 1 through 5 are all free for the PDF, and then she also has really cheap other resources like science unit studies, that kind of thing. Teachers Pay Teachers is a place that you're really going to want to check out if you like unit studies. Pinterest obviously is a place you're going to look. There are just so many resources available. So hopefully this gives you guys some kind of starting point where you want to go from here. I've just been talking. So I hope that you guys liked this video and got some information from it, and then I didn't just waste all this time talking just to hear myself talk. If you guys have any questions or want me to go in depth on more things, please let me know. I am very passionate about homeschooling, so I am happy to learn about what I don't know enough to make a video about yet. And that's it. Bye, guys.